Hello and welcome for a webinar on osteology, episode 3. My dear students, we are studying osteology, general osteology these days, and we have covered the introductory part of osteology and introductory part of skeleton, various ways of classification of bones according to shape, according to structure, according to development, according to region, and so on. And today, my dear students, we have to proceed little further as far as general osteology is concerned. So I welcome you all again for general osteology episode 3. And let us see where the gentleman is going to take us today. And that part is, of course, gross structure of an adult long bone. So let us understand the structure of bones today. First, we'll try to understand the gross structure of an adult long bone. Here, my dear students, there is one image in front of you, and that is a humerus. Correct? You have, I think, you have already started studying particular osteology. So this is a humerus, which is a bone of arm. And if you look at this image, you will find that it is a long one. So it's elongated, so it looks long. And that is having a shaft in the middle. This is called as a shaft, and it has got two ends, one end and other end here. And you can see different other characteristics present on the humerus. You can see uh, what you call features of humerus that we will study at the time of particular study of humerus. The long bone looks like this, and we have to understand the details of structures of long bones. Okay, the naked examination of the longitudinal and transverse section of a long bone shows some features like shaft and two ends. Okay, so let us understand what is meaning of shaft. From without inwards, the shaft is composed of periosteum. So the outer layer is periosteum, the another layer is cortex, and the inner layer is medullary cavity. And this medullary cavity, it is having endosteum inside. So just like periosteum outside, endosteum inside. In between periosteum and endosteum, there is a cortex. So apart from endosteum, in the cavity, there is a medulla. So it is called as medullary cavity. So what is periosteum? Periosteum is a thin fibrous membrane covering the surface of the bone. It is made up of outer fibrous layer and inner cellular layer, which is osteogenic in nature. Osteogenic means it helps in osteogenesis to increase the size of bone. And periosteum is united to the underlying bone by surface fibers, and the union is particularly strong over the attachment of tendons and ligaments. And at the articular margin where the bone takes part in formation of joint, the periosteum is continuous with the capsule of the joint. The abundant periosteal arteries nourish the outer part of the underlying cortex also. Periosteum is highly sensitive because it has got a rich nerve supply, which makes it very sensitive part of the bone. So whatever pain you feel for bone is because of rich nerve supply to the periosteum. Now we'll go to the next part. After periosteum comes cortex. Cortex is made up of compact bone. I told you yesterday that there are structurally, macroscopically, the structures of bones are compact bone and spongy bone. So cortex is made up of compact bone, which gives it the desired strength to withstand all possible mechanical strains and forces. And the last portion is medullary cavity. That means what you call medulla of the bone. The medullary cavity is filled with a red or yellow bone marrow. My dear students, you know the bone marrow, and the bone marrow is actually red. So at the birth or during the childhood, the bone marrow is always red everywhere with widespread hemopoiesis, because production of blood or RBCs is very much important during the growing age. Eventually, as you grow further and further, most of the medullary cavity bone marrow will get converted into yellow bone marrow due to degeneration. And this medullary cavity is having inside covering to attach to the bone, that is called as endosteum, which is the internal covering of a bone. As the age advances, the red bone marrow at many places gets atrophied and it is replaced by yellow bone marrow, which is a fatty bone marrow and with no power of hemopoiesis. But there are some portions of bone, even in old age, they still have red bone marrow and they keep continuous function of hemopoiesis, and this red bone marrow persists in cancellous ends of the long bone. Okay, the ends of the long bones, I told you the epiphysis part. These are the ends of the long bones, and here the red bone marrow still persists in the sternum also, in the ribs also, and in the vertebrae and in the bones of the skull base. Okay, the bone marrow is continuously remains present, and it's found throughout life, and it keeps on doing hemopoiesis work. Okay, now we'll go after shaft. Now we have studied what is shaft. Okay, shaft is this portion. So now we have got two ends, and these two ends of bone are made up of cancellous bone. I told you shaft is made up of compact bone, and these ends are made up of cancellous bone, which are covered by hyaline cartilage, because hyaline cartilage is required to take part in formation of joint. Hyaline cartilage is also called as articular cartilage in case of ends of long bones. Now this is the longitudinal section here, and this is the transverse section of shaft, and this is a longitudinal section of full long bone. If you see, this dark color is of compact bone, and this white cavity is a medullary cavity, and this thin layer is called as periosteum. And these two ends are having cancellous bone, cancellous type of bone. Okay, cancellous bone, what we call. And these are the articular cartilages which are taking in the part of formation of joint. Same thing you can see here on the transverse section, cross section. You can see the periosteum, you can see the compact bone of cortex, and inside you can see the medullary cavity. It's very easy to understand. Well, here also you can see the same structures in the two ends. This is a femur image. You can see the upper end there is a spongy bone. In the lower end also there is a spongy bone. But in the center and the covering of ends also, you can see the compact bone. And inside you can see the medullary cavity. So medullary cavity is usually absent at both the ends. And the same things, by development, they are called as, both the ends are called as epiphysis. And in the center, shaft is called as diaphysis. And the junction of diaphysis with epiphysis is called as a metaphysis. So don't forget this terminology: epiphysis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. There are three of them. So the shaft means diaphysis and ends means epiphysis. At least this you remember at this present. Now let us go for understanding the parts of a young bone. Now what we saw was parts of adult bone. Now we will see parts of young bone. So young bone ossifies from three parts: the two ends from the secondary centers, and the in between shaft from the primary center. So any long bone at the maximum of them, they require two secondary centers for development of two ends and one primary center for the development of shaft. Primary means because it appears first, so primary. Secondary means they appear after the first center. And ossification center means the center or a point on a bone from where the ossification begins. I'll show the image for you to better understand. Before ossification is complete, the following parts of the bone can be defined. Now this is a growing young long bone. So parts of a young long bone. Okay, this is a shaft. Shaft is called as a diaphysis. The diaphysis will have one center for the development, and that is called as a primary center. Eventually, two more center will come, one for upper center, upper end or lower end. Those are called as secondary ossification center for two epiphyses. And in between epiphysis and diaphysis end, this end is called as, end of the diaphysis is called as metaphysis. So there are two metaphysis end. So in between epiphysis and metaphysis, there is a epiphyseal plate of cartilage where the active growth of the bone takes place. So these words you have to remember: epiphysis, epiphyseal plate of cartilage, diaphysis, and metaphysis. Okay, we will see one by one what are these things once again. But prior to that, we'll understand three major parts of a young long bone, and those are two epiphyses and one diaphysis. Here you can see clearly. Now this bone is growing. Now what is epiphysis? What is the exact meaning of epiphysis? Epiphysis means ends or tips of a bone which ossify from secondary center. So bones have got, every long bone has got ends. They may also have some tips also, like trochanters, tubercles. So those are called as tips. So the ends and tips of a bone which ossify from a secondary center are called as epiphyses, and they are of different types and they are of different number in different bones. So here you can see bone which is having a diaphysis and two ends which are called as epiphyses. Then there is epiphyseal plate of cartilage, and metaphysis which is a end, epiphyseal end of diaphysis. Okay, there is a medullary cavity shown here. You can see from inside the endosteum, you can see from outside the periosteum. In this image there are lots of things explained. So there are four types of epiphyses. In exam, most of the time the epiphysis is asked for a short note and sometimes for MCQs also. The four types are pressure epiphysis, traction epiphysis, atavistic epiphysis, and aberrant epiphysis. It's very easy to remember. If you look at this diagram, in different bones, different epiphyses are shown. Means, for example, this is a humerus, and humerus head takes a pressure due to weight bearing. So it is called as a pressure epiphysis. And the trochanter of the humerus, they are constantly, prone for traction due to pull of the muscle. So they are called as traction epiphysis. Aren't these ends and tips of a long bone? Yes, these are the tips and ends of long bone. So they are called as epiphyses. And the common epiphyses are only two. Basically, only two are very important. One is pressure epiphysis, another is traction epiphysis. You can see both of them in the upper end of humerus. But there are other two like aberrant epiphysis and atavistic epiphysis. Atavistic epiphysis means which is sometimes present. The coracoid, which is a separate bone and which gets attached to another bone. So atavistic universal example is coracoid process of scapula, because coracoid process was a separate bone, what you call morphologically, but eventually it gets attached to scapula. So it is called as atavistic epiphysis. And aberrant epiphysis is present in miniature long bones. The miniature long bones, though they have got two ends, only one end is having epiphyseal plate of cartilage with growing purpose. So only one epiphysis is present in such bones, and that is called as aberrant epiphysis. Epiphysis at the distal end of first metatarsal. Now this is one example is given here. Now let us see one by one what the meaning of this different epiphysis means. First is pressure epiphysis. It is articular end of the bone. That means the part of the bone which takes part in the formation of joint. So it is called articular, and it takes part in transmission of weight due to formation of joint. For example, head of femur, lower end of radius, or upper end of there are, in case of humerus, there are two ends which takes part in formation of shoulder joint and elbow joint. So those are all pressure epiphyses. Here you can see a pressure epiphysis. Here this is a ball of upper end of femur which is taking part in a hip joint, and it is a end also. So it is called as a epiphysis, and it is taking pressure due to body weight transmitted from up to down towards gravity. So it is called as a pressure epiphysis. Simultaneously, I am showing you two traction epiphysis also. This is greater trochanter and this is lesser trochanter. They are tips, so they are epiphysis, and they are subjected to traction by the pull of muscles. So they are called as traction epiphysis. So you have understood now what is traction epiphysis. Traction epiphysis are non-articular, means they don't take part in formation of joint, but they give surface for the attachment of muscles. So they do not take part in transmission of the weight. They always provide attachment to one or more muscles, tendons, which exert a traction on the epiphysis. So they are called as traction epiphysis. In case of upper end of humerus, greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, they are the traction epiphysis. The traction epiphysis ossify later than the pressure epiphysis. So ossification means formation of bone in that part. The pressure epiphysis forms first, and then traction epiphysis forms. So ossification is later than pressure epiphysis in case of traction epiphysis. The examples of traction epiphysis are trochanters of femur and tubercles of humerus. These two examples are more than sufficient to understand what is traction epiphysis. Here you can see traction, greater trochanter, lesser trochanter. You can see here, both are given. And here you can see pressure epiphysis simultaneously. Okay. On other side, I have given other examples of epiphysis. Well, now we will see what is atavistic epiphysis. Atavistic epiphysis means phylogenetically an independent bone which in man becomes fused to another bone. So phylogenetically it is a different bone, but in case of human beings it gets fused with another bone. So I told you in the beginning also, coracoid process was phylogenetically independent bone. Now it is getting fused with scapula, so it is called as atavistic epiphysis. And another is os trigonum example for atavistic epiphysis. Well, let us proceed further, and the last one is aberrant epiphysis. Here you can see the coracoid process. This coracoid process is a separate bone, but it is getting fused with scapula, so it is called as atavistic epiphysis. Also, in case of os trigonum, the posterior tubercle of talus, the talus bone which is present in the foot, one of the tarsals, it has got one small posterior tubercle, this portion. This was actually a separate bone, but now it is getting fused with talus. So it is called as os trigonum, and it is also an atavistic epiphysis. These two examples are very easy to understand. Okay. Now, what is the meaning of aberrant epiphysis? I told you there are 4 epiphysis types of epiphysis. This last one. It is not always present. Epiphysis means aberrant means not always present. Okay. Examples: epiphysis at the head of the first metacarpal and at the base of the other metacarpals. I have told you that there are 5 metacarpals. So this is the head of first metacarpal. This is aberrant epiphysis, and in case of other 4 metacarpals, the lower ends are having this aberrant epiphysis. So they are not always present. Here you can see the same example, aberrant epiphysis from the head of the first metacarpal. Here you can see. Okay. So, and these are other 3 of the epiphysis. Here you can see pressure epiphysis. Here you can see traction epiphysis, and here you can see atavistic epiphysis and aberrant epiphysis. So this is all about epiphysis. Now we'll try to understand what is diaphysis. In the beginning, I told you the shaft is called as diaphysis in a growing bone. So it is an elongated shaft of a long bone which ossifies from a primary center, and that is called as a diaphysis. Here you can see long bone, and here you can see the diaphysis portion. So after diaphysis comes metaphysis, and after metaphysis comes epiphysis. This is a proximal epiphysis. This is distal epiphysis because there are 2 ends. Okay. Now, what is metaphysis? Metaphysis means it is epiphyseal end of diaphysis. So the epiphyseal ends, because there are 2 ends to the epiphysis, 1 and 2. So these 2 are called as metaphysis. When you use plural, it becomes SES, metaphysis. When you use one, it becomes SIS, metaphysis. Please remember that. Physis means in meaning, word meaning end. Each metaphysis is the zone of active growth. Now here the maximum growth take place as far as the growth of this diaphysis is concerned. So they are called as metaphysis. Well, here you can see this portion is a metaphysis, and here you can see this portion is a metaphysis. Those are the parts of diaphysis itself, but those are the ends of diaphysis towards the epiphysis, and they are called as metaphysis. In this bone, they are nicely shown. Well, before epiphyseal fusion, the metaphysis is richly supplied with blood through the arteries forming hairpin bends. Hairpin bends means the artery going towards that end gets curved like this, and that is the richly blood supplied area for the purpose of active growth. This is a common sign of osteomyelitis in children because the bacteria and emboli are easily trapped at the hairpin bends, causing infarction in case of children because the ends are not fused. They are still separate because growth is going on. So this is the significance of this provision. After the epiphyseal fusion, the vascular communications are established between metaphysis and epiphysis. So when they get fused, there is a continuity. That means communication is established. Now the metaphysis contains no more end arteries and there is no longer subject to osteomyelitis. So why the osteomyelitis is common in children is this reason, because of development. And the last portion is epiphyseal plate of cartilage. It separates epiphysis from metaphysis. Okay. The proliferation of cell in this cartilaginous plate is responsible for lengthwise growth of a long bone. So length is increased at this level, and you can see a growing bone picture here, and the blue strap here between the epiphysis and metaphysis, because diaphysis is low, below epiphysis, then comes epiphyseal plate of cartilage, then comes metaphysis, and then comes diaphysis. Here you can see cartilage becomes bone on this side. So this is a growing phase showing the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. After the epiphyseal fusion, the bone can no longer grow in length, and you know the growth actually completes at the age of adulthood. Say after the completion of 18 years on an average, when the third molar tooth appears, the growth in the total body gets completed. So in adulthood, now there is no growth by length. There is growth by width. Now you are growing by length still, because you are, I think most of you are under around 18. I am growing by width because I am an old man. The growth cartilage is nourished by both the epiphyseal and metaphyseal arteries. This is about epiphyseal plate of cartilage. Now we'll try to understand in short what is the blood supply of bone. If you look at the long bone, there are different arteries supplying the different parts of the bone. For example, the epiphysis is supplied by the epiphyseal arteries, metaphysis is supplied by the metaphyseal arteries, and the diaphysis is supplied by the nutrient arteries. It's quite big and tortuous. So see, so you get a nutrient artery foramina on the shaft of the long bone. Usually it is towards one end. If it is present near the lower end, that means that the upper end is growing. If it is present at the upper end, that means lower end is growing. Okay. And there are periosteal arteries which supply the periosteum. So we'll take one by one. Once again, try to understand the blood supply of long bone is derived from the following arteries. First one is nutrient artery. It enters the shaft through the nutrient artery foramina and runs obliquely through the cortex and divides into ascending and descending branches in the medullary cavity. Okay. The nutrient artery supplies medullary cavity inner two-thirds of the cortex and metaphysis, and lots of anastomosis is established inside. Now next is the periosteal arteries. They are especially numerous in number. Numerous means more, abundant beneath the muscular and ligamentous attachments. They ramify beneath the periosteum and enter the Hoffman's canals to supply the outer one-third of the cortex. The inner one-third of the cortex is supplied by medullary. Inner two-third cortex supplied by these arteries, nutrient arteries, branches. Okay. Now outer one-third is supplied by the periosteal arteries. I'm talking about cortex. Plus periosteum is fully supplied by periosteal arteries. Well, the last is epiphyseal arteries. These are derived from the periarticular vascular arcade, circulus vasculus, which is present around the head of, on the end of every bone which takes part in the formation of joint, and they are supplying the epiphysis. Out of the numerous vascular foramen in the region, only few admit the arteries. Others are for the venous exits. So venous return is also important. The number and size of this foramina give an idea of the relative vascularity of the two ends of the long bone. If you see from close distance, you get lots of foramina there. And the last arteries supplying the long bone are metaphyseal. So we saw epiphyseal, periosteal, nutrient artery, and metaphyseal. Metaphyseal arteries are derived from the neighboring systemic vessels. They pass directly into metaphysis and reinforce the metaphyseal branches from a primary nutrient artery. For anatomical basis of osteomyelitis, see under metaphysis, that we have seen under metaphysis about hairpin bend type of arteries for osteomalacia. Here this is a black and white diagram of a growing end. Here you can see growing end means closure is shown here. You can see growing end here. Epiphysis, epiphyseal plate of cartilage, metaphysis, and diaphysis. Here you can see hairpin bends of end arteries in the metaphysis before epiphyseal fusion. So fusion has not taken place here. Okay. The blood supply of a long bone in which the upper epiphysis is a growing end here, has not yet fused with the diaphysis. Other bones are also supplied by blood vessels which are derived from periosteal vessels which enter their non-articular surfaces. Here you can see, for example, scapula is supplied by so many arteries, scapular anastomosis. In vertebra, the body is supplied by the anterior and posterior vessels, and the vertebral arch is supplied by large vessel entering the bases of transverse processes. And in its marrow is drained by two large BC vertebral veins, because venous drainage is to be shown here now. A rib is supplied by the nutrient artery which enters it just behind the tubercle.
सर आवाज ब्रेक होतोय तुमचा.
Periosteal arteries, here you can see the periosteal arteries. Veins are numerous and large. The veins are numerous and large, and the cancellous red marrow bones, and for example basic vertebral veins. In the compact bone, they accompany arteries in the Hoffman's canals. So in short, you have to understand different names of the arteries. This is in much more details, but I am trying to give you the basic idea about the blood supply of bones. Lymphatic drainage is also there, but it is not clearly demonstrated within the bone, although some of them accompany the periosteal blood vessels, because it is a neurovascular bundle, artery, vein, nerve, also lymphatics. And the lymph is drained to the regional lymph nodes in the particular area. This is a lymphatic system diagram overall, but for bone, it is not much clear how the lymphatics are draining lymph there. And the nerve supply is the last part. Nerves accompany the blood vessels. So it is a neurovascular bundle. Most of them are sympathetic and vasomotor in function. Nerve accompany the blood vessels that supply bones. Here you can see the neurovascular bundles. The periosteum is rich in sensory nerves because it is sensitive to tearing and tension. It's it's like a watchdog. So anything touching the periosteum, it gives a pain to the person. So they are supplied by the sensory nerves. That is why. And a few of them are sensory, while which are distributed to the articular ends and the periosteum of the long bones, and to the vertebra and to the large fat bones. Now the development of and ossification of bones we'll talk in short. I have already told you, bones are first laid down as mesodermal condensation. Conversion of mesodermal models into bone is called as intramembranous or mesenchymal ossification. Dermal bones. During classification of bones, I have told you, ossification takes place by centers of ossification, each one of which is a point where the laying down of the lamellae we have seen in a microscopic classification. Those are the layers, bone formation layers, starts by the osteoblast situated on the newly formed capillary. The centers of ossification may be primary or secondary. The center which comes first is a primary, and after that n number of centers which are coming are called as secondary centers. For example, scapula has got one primary center and 7 secondary centers. You read the ossification. Only in short, ossification means formation of bone, or you can the process of laying down of lamellae. Here you can see the full picture of image of ossification. Bone is first hyaline cartilage model. So there is no bone. Hyaline cartilage is one of the types of cartilage. Before hyaline cartilage, it is a fibrous tissue. Fibrous tissue to hyaline cartilage model, and then when primary center appears, it starts getting converted into bone. So it's called as primary ossification center. And the primary ossification center forms most of the central portion of the bone, for example, diaphysis in case of long bone. And then the secondary center appears at one end, so it's called a secondary ossification center. Depending upon the requirement of bone, many secondary centers may come, one for this tip, one for that tip, one for this. So there are different epiphyses, so different ossification centers you get. And eventually these centers fuse each other to form a full bone. So this is a diagram of full ossification showing primary center and the secondary centers. The primary center appear before birth. So in the intrauterine life, usually during the 8th week of intrauterine life itself, means at the end of second month, most of the primary centers appear. And the secondary centers appear after the birth with very few exceptions. Very few exceptions means just before the birth, some centers appear. So those are exceptions. Many centers, secondary centers appear during puberty. Not only after birth, some secondary centers appear at the age of puberty. That means 13, 14. So and that takes for the completion of total growth, and it is by the age of adulthood, and that is 18 to 25, depending upon appearance of the third molar tooth. A primary center forms diaphyses and the secondary center form all the epiphyses. That I have told you. Fusion of all the epiphyses with the diaphyses starts at the begins of the puberty and is completed by the age of 25 years at the latest. Sometimes it gets fused by the age of 18 also, after which no more bone growth can take place. The law of ossification states that secondary centers of ossification which appear first are last to unite. That means the secondary centers keep on appearing. The last one, the center which comes last, which appears first, is getting fused last. It takes more time to get united. The end of a long bone where epiphyseal fusion is delayed is called as the growing end of the long bone. So the long bone has got two ends. Where the fusion is delayed, that means that end is still growing. So it is called as a growing end of the bone. And here you can see in the embryo, the bone looks like this. At the young age, bone looks like this. And at the adult age, bone looks like this. Here you can see the cancellous part. Here you can see the compact. Here you can medullary cavity, articular cartilage. You know, the fusion has taken place here. And growth of long bones, it by length, multiplication of cells in the epiphyseal plate of cartilage. Bone grows in thickness by multiplication of cells in periosteum. So length and breadth. Bone grows by deposition of new bone on the surface and at the ends. This process of bone deposition by osteoclast is called as appositional growth or surface accretion. And the last part is, in order to maintain the shape, and the unwanted bone must be removed, and this portion of removal by osteoblast is called as remodeling. This is how marrow cavity increases in size. So there is a remodeling of the bone also to give you the shape. And with this, most of the information of the bone I have finished, and remaining information, we have puppies at home and they are also very fond of bones. I want to tell you that the osteology topic is quite easy, but I went into details because this is very important for you as far as the whole anatomy of the body is concerned. The major part is osteology. And with this, my dear students, let us end today's webinar on osteology episode 3. We'll come back some other day with the last part of osteology, last episode of osteology. If you have any questions, you can ask me at the end of this webinar. If you have a time, I think there is still time. I'll give you some time for a question. Just wait for a second. Yes. And with this, we will end today's webinar. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day.